Hi everyone, nice to see you again. It's nice to do another video. This is sort of like a part 2 of an earlier one we did about beer bottles. I thought I'd just give you a little bit more history, not a full history, but a bit of a history from the earliest beer bottle, which I don't have. This is some of them. I've only got from late 1700s, early 1800s, going on to near just the end of the 19th century. But I thought I'd give you a bit of a history, especially if you're new to beer bottle collecting and you don't know the full history. Maybe you don't have some books. And this is some of the information that I got. That the first English beer bottle, and the shape was known as a shaft and globe. I know most people think it's the onion bottle, but prior to the onion bottle there was a bottle which I don't have, would love to have. If there's anybody out there that would like to donate one to me, I'll happily accept it.
That's not gonna happen.
Just in case. This is a shaft and globe bottle. So this is sort of like the first type of English stroke Irish beer bottle there was. Possibly, even though there's nothing that's been found, we could probably go back as early as the 1630s by a bloke called Sir Kenelm Digby. Although a few years after this, in 1662, the first patent for a shaft and globe bottle was by a partnership of Henry Holden and John Colnett, and they were the first ones to invent, and they perfected the art of bottle making or glass making bottles. So that's the first. So from that shape, the next shape was the onion bottle. Guess what? I don't have one of those either. I would love to have one. So yeah, onion bottles, they came in a few different shapes. You know, some were a bit rounder, some were a bit more squat. A few did have handles on them, like that one, but mostly that sort of shape. So you went from the shaft and globe bottle, which was a long neck and more dumpy or round at the bottom, to the onion bottle, well, which is a bit more squat really. So that was there was only those couple of types up until we get to and those ones had seals on it, and the seal, which was a round bit of molten glass, now that was only put on, you can see it there and on this picture, see the round disc here? Now that was put on the shaft and globe and onion bottles and the cylinder bottles after. Now that round disc, while that was still hot and the bottle was still hot after being made, that would be put on to the bottle and then stamped with I think it was like a metal press, whatever the initials of whoever owned it, the name of the inn, and sometimes had dates on it as well. So that is seals. I don't have any. There could possibly have been a seal on this one that was broken off, and this one, but they're gone. Yeah, so that was that. So we come up to what I have now. So we've gone from the shaft and globe to the onion bottle, then they fell out of favour, and then we come on to the cylinder bottles. So it was something, I suppose, that was invented so there'd be more room on ship to obviously get more bottles in, and more bottles to be carted off to different places, so you could get more on the wagon or more in the ship. So we come up to these cylinder bottles. Now these ones here that I have are from the latter half of the 18th century, so round about 1780, This one here, about 1800. The upright cylinder type bottle, okay, which came into being, it happened because of, there was it's called the Methuen Treaty. Now, this fella called John Methuen, who was an ambassador to Portugal, he came up or made a treaty with Portugal that there would be Portuguese wines that would come into Britain at a lower tax rate, so they could bring more in, and then England, Ireland would export their wool to Portugal. So there was a deal done there, so there was a lower tax rate, because there was a tax on every bottle in Britain. So that duty was reduced so that this partnership could happen. Oh yeah, and what they did as well was the Portuguese now imported port into the country. Now the French had it was what did they brought in, the French was bringing in claret and Burgundy, but now the market was being flooded with Portuguese port. The upper classes were starting to drink port instead of Burgundy, so obviously the French weren't happy about that. So yeah, that was a deal struck, and well, port is still being drunk today. I like a nice tipple myself. From 1630, the year 1630 up to 1811, all beer bottles were made by hand, and that's why you find most older beer bottles are not the same. Especially like if you see these two, the way they are, the way they're formed, the top, the applied rim here. It was the skill of the bottle maker, and this is what's called a kick-up base. Now the whole point of the kick-up base was so the bottle could stand up. That's the whole point of it. And like I said in our earlier video, you got the snapped ponto, and there'll be a round mark at the end where the glass blower's tube went into, was to blow and make the shape. And if you can see it on the bottle here, you can almost see like where he's held it and shaped it. Can you see these? Almost like bubbles in the glass. But yeah, you can feel that they're handmade. So that was the whole point of the kick-up base, was just to keep it upright. So there was only really three major changes over the years that leading up to the cylinder bottles. So we went from that to now bottles were being made out of a mould, and that was invented in 1811. That was actually invented by the Henry Ricketts, who made and sold moulded wine bottles. So he was the first to do it. I know there was others doing it at this time, but he was the first, and that was in 1811. And that was made in Bristol. So he made that at the in Bristol, and I think it was by the Phoenix Glassworks. So they were very famous, and they carried on from 1811, and sadly their factory closed in 1923. But this is the funny thing, they made wine bottles, and where did they make them? The street was called Cheese Lane. Wine and cheese. Oh, I love it. That is just brilliant. You couldn't choose that, could you? Oh. Cheese Lane. So yeah, that they were the first, as we mentioned. I got a feeling this one here is actually by Ricketts. This bottle here probably dates to about 1830s. You can hardly see it on the bottom, but there's definitely what looks like the remains of Ricketts and Co. on the bottom, which is nice. And me being a Devonian, don't live too far from Bristol, so it's nice to have that one. What happened was, up to 1811 and onwards, if you have a look at the bottles, look at the colour. They're virtually all the same colour. Why? Because there was a duty put on glass makers.
Except those ones.
Yeah, they're quite a lot later. So there was a duty. So they were regulated that they had to pay on all glass. This was the duty paid. It was the cost of £8, 9 shillings per hundredweight of glass bottles. Okay, and £4 and 8 shillings on flint glass. But this duty was abolished in 1845. So now they no longer had to pay a duty. Now they could experiment. So we move on from dark green, or what we call black glass. We move on to molded. So these were handmade. These were made in molds. I have 5-part mold. So we got a bigger 4.5. Oh, I can't remember now the size. That's a 5-part mold. I have these two are 3-part molds. So we have the base 1 part. The neck is split in 2 parts. I don't know if you can see the seam that runs down there end. So there's 2 parts there. Obviously the applied lip and the body. The body there is one bit. We move on to this one. This is made in 3 parts. We've got the seam here that runs all the way to the neck. So that's 2 parts in the mold and the bottom, and then you've got the applied lip after. So I said 3 parts. I'm not counting. I'm not counting the lip, which is 4, if you want to be technical. So that was abolished in 1845. So once the duty was gone, what they started to do then was they added manganese to the glass. Now manganese acts as like a decolorer. So now instead of just having dark green, we could now move on and get see-through glass. Now the ones that I've got in front of me are Hamiltons. Now the first Hamilton that was produced was in, I did write it down here.
You wrote everything down.
I've lost my notes.
You've actually written everything down.
Actually, the first Hamilton was invented in 1814 by Mr. Hamilton, which I haven't wrote his name there. God, what's the point of notes? So it was by Mr. Hamilton in 1914, but the Hamilton actually didn't become popular for another 25 years later. So that was 25 years later, and we got there's 3 different variations of Hamilton. We've got what's known as the egg-shaped Hamilton. Now I think this is an Irish bottle because we got the square end. Now that's obviously in a mold, so it's 2-part, and this one. Now that was the first, the egg shape. Then we got the rounded bottom, and if I let that go, it's just going to fall over. I know the neck's snapped off, but it's still quite early.
Seems really smooth.
Yeah, it's lovely. Yeah, it's smooth because it's been in the sea for so long. Then I know some people call it the Skittle, but it's actually called a flat bottom egg. Obviously, because like round bottom egg, flat bottom, and what can happen now is they can stand up.
Can I just say something?
Yeah, go on then.
The colour of this glass seems the colour of this glass because that's blue as well. So is it made the same, or would that be completely different?
What you mean the ingredients that went into making the glass?
Yeah.
Yeah, the same. It's not changed since then. Apart from the molds are different.
So
now.
then what's clear glass made from? Just like for the colour, you know, because then there's like this colour.
I actually have, there's a recipe in the book that I've been looking at and it has that recipe.
For like normal clear glass.
Yeah, how to make it. The exact amount of each part, manganese, sand, and
So
the
all
other things
that
that
would
go
make
into
it look clear.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But
Interesting.
yeah, it's funny because now like we've gone from that to that. And the other thing is back in the early 1800s and even middle 1800s, you couldn't see what was in there. But now, moving on to early 1800s and into the first half, the 1850s, now people can see what's actually in the bottle.
I like the cod bottles as well.
Yeah. So, yeah, do you know when the first cod bottle was invented? Well, the first cod bottle, which I've got a couple, two different sizes, both with their marble stoppers, not rare ones. See the marble? Sorry, can you see the marble stoppers in there? Quite common bottles. There's quite a few variations of the cod bottle. Different colours. You can get like blue tops. You can even get a complete cobalt blue cod, which is really rare. They're nice to have. So these were invented, the cod bottles, in 1875 by a man called Hiram Codd. So he invented them, and that was in Camberwell, London, which there was quite a few glassworks in London. Yeah, so that's as far as I wanted to take you, really. I just didn't write the name down of the Hamilton. Oh, I just forgot to write it down. But yeah, so that's just a brief little history on the beer bottles. These aren't beer bottles, but they soda water became quite popular. Soda water, which was actually invented in the 1790s, but didn't become popular until the 1800s. Where I know at the exhibition in 1851, when Schweppes was selling their natural waters, it was called, but it's carbonated water, so air that's been pushed into the water to make it carbonated. In 1851, over 4.5 months at the exhibition in 1851, they sold over 1 million bottles of Schweppes soda water. And that was without other different kinds as well, which went into the tens of thousands. So it becomes something really popular. So yeah, that's just a little brief history of beer bottles.
Brief, it's probably like 20 minutes long.
Oh. Yeah, I didn't mean to do it there, and my notes terrible. But yeah, I've got some really good books with some really good information. Yeah, so if you're new to bottle collecting, this is just some of the things that you can collect. So these 1700s, I think you need to feel a bottle, to get used to. Look, if you feel them, Indy.
What's on this?
Oh, that's been in the water.
Oh.
But if you can feel the glass,
Yeah.
and then you come up to.
I'm supposing probably like the newer ones feel smoother.
Well, these are still.
Actually, no, this one feels the smoothest so far.
Yeah, this one here would be about 1830s, up to 1850s.
So what does the difference make by feeling them?
Wait, I mean for fakes,
Oh.
because fakes are being made now, so I think age.
Because I suppose the oldest ones are the heaviest.
Well, these can be quite heavy. And if you pick this one up from the 1700s, and shape,
It's actually not that heavy.
no, and then feel that one. That's like early 1800s.
That's really heavy.
Yeah, that feels a lot heavier. And then the moulds, that's the 5-part mould. But as you can see, they're starting to get, you're going from this really thick glass, can't see anything in it. You can start to see a little bit more, and then you come onto the clear glass, and now they're experimenting because the tax was abolished on glass in 1845. So that's just a brief little history. So we'll wrap it up there. If you have any questions or have any other knowledge that you could pass on to me, just leave a comment in the box below and tell your friends.
It's funny to hear it coming from you.
Yeah, and don't forget to subscribe. And we'll see you soon, and hopefully in the water, we'll get some shots in the water of me pulling
We've
bottles.
said it quite a few times now, we haven't been able
Yeah,
to
I've
get
not
out.
done one yet, so still not very well. So hopefully really soon we'll have some pictures for you. Okay, thanks very much, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.